All right, welcome back. In our last discussion, we really dug into the abstract side of things, all the different ways to measure the rate of surplus value. But today, we're going to bridge that gap between abstract theory and the concrete world we all live in. We're going to tackle what Marx considers the most fundamental and frankly the most misleading category in all of capitalism, the wage.
So right off the bat, we're faced with a serious puzzle, a real paradox. If profit comes from labor that isn't paid for, then how in the world does a wage for a full 8-hour day even make sense? It seems like the math just doesn't work. This is the central mystery we have to solve today, and cracking it is absolutely crucial to grasping how the capitalist system actually functions.
Okay, so let's start by laying out this puzzle of the wage a bit more clearly. What you'll see is that Chapter 19 is all about peeling back the layers, distinguishing the surface appearance of a simple, fair transaction from the deeper social relationship that's hidden underneath.
I mean, let's be honest. In our everyday lives, the wage seems pretty straightforward, right? You work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. It feels like a fair exchange of equivalents. And that's exactly how the classical economists saw it. But for Marx, this is a powerful illusion, a kind of magic trick that masterfully conceals where profit really comes from.
So to see through this illusion, we have to get incredibly precise about what the worker is actually selling to the capitalist. And I can't stress this enough. For Marx, if you don't get this one distinction, you can't really get a scientific handle on capitalism. It all comes down to the difference between labor and labor power.
So what is labor power? It's not the act of working. It's the capacity to work. It's the sum total of a person's mental and physical abilities. It's the potential that a worker agrees to put at the disposal of a capitalist for a certain amount of time. That's the commodity being sold.
And the difference here is everything. Labor power is the commodity. And like any commodity, it has a value. And that value is determined by what it costs to produce it. So think of things like food, housing, clothing, whatever's necessary to keep the worker alive and kicking, ready to show up for work the next day. Labor, on the other hand, is the activity itself. It's the expenditure of that labor power in the factory. And it's this activity, this living labor, that has the unique ability to create new value.
This leads to what you might call the special, almost magical property of labor power. Marx puts it beautifully from the worker's point of view. The commodity I'm selling you is special because when you use it, it creates more value than it cost. And that's exactly why you, the capitalist, bought it in the first place. That gap, the difference between the value of labor power and the greater value created by labor, that's the whole secret of profit.
Okay, now that we have that crucial distinction between labor and labor power locked down, we can finally look at the transformation itself. This is the core mechanism, the sleight of hand that flips reality on its head and creates the powerful illusion of the wage.
And here it is, the essential point. The wage is not the price of labor, it's the disguised price of labor power. Marx uses this amazing metaphor, calling it the alchemistical retort of the marketplace. Just like an alchemist trying to turn lead into gold, the wage form takes the value of one thing, labor power, and magically makes it appear as the price of something else entirely, labor. And this one move completely mystifies the entire relationship.
So, how is this illusion built? Let's walk through it. Step 1 is the reality. The working day is split in two. For the first part, let's say 4 hours, the worker is doing what Marx calls necessary labor. They're creating enough value to cover the cost of their own labor power. That's their wage. But the next 4 hours? That's surplus labor. That's unpaid work that creates profit for the capitalist. Now, step 2. The wage form takes the value created in those first 4 hours and presents it as a single payment, say a daily wage. And then, step 3, the illusion. That single payment now appears to cover the entire 8-hour day. And just like that, all 8 hours look like paid labor, and the division between paid and unpaid work vanishes completely. But Marx goes even further. He doesn't just say this is misleading. He argues that from a strictly scientific point of view, the very idea of a price of labor is fundamentally irrational. He calls the phrase price of labor an absurd contradiction. And, think about it for a second. In his system, a price is just the monetary name for the value of a commodity, and value itself is measured by labor time. So how can labor, the very thing that measures value, have a value or a price of its own? It's like asking, how long is length itself, or what's the weight of a kilogram? You can't ask for the price of the thing that measures price. It's a logical short circuit.
So, to put it as simply as possible, the expression price of labor is irrational because labor creates value. It doesn't have a value. To talk about its price is to make a fundamental category mistake. It confuses the commodity that's actually being sold, labor power, with the value-creating activity that the capitalist uses, labor. And this brings us to the really profound consequences of this whole transformation. This isn't just some clever economic accounting trick. This is the very ideological foundation that makes the entire social order seem legitimate and fair.
The wage form is so incredibly powerful because it makes the underlying exploitation completely invisible. It erases any traces of the split between paid and unpaid labor. It makes it seem like a worker is being compensated for every single second they work. And by doing that, it masks the real relationship of exploitation behind the appearance of a free and equal contract between two individuals. And that appearance becomes the very basis for all our common ideas about fairness, justice, and freedom in the marketplace.
And Marx, well, he doesn't pull any punches with his language. This vampire metaphor is one of his most famous, and it really drives home what the wage form is hiding. Behind that seemingly normal paycheck is a dynamic where dead labor, capital, can only survive and grow by sucking living labor from the worker.
So there you have it. That's the secret of the wage. It's not just a payment. It's a social form, a disguised relationship that takes the reality of exploitation in the factory and makes it look like a fair deal in the marketplace. And understanding this transformation, well, it's the key that unlocks the whole mystery of how profit is not only produced, but also justified in our society.
We've now uncovered the secret. We've seen through the illusion. But how does this all actually work in practice, day to day? Well, that is exactly where we're headed next. Join me next time as we continue into Chapter 20 of Capital, Time Wages, and see how the duration of work itself becomes the direct way this whole system is measured and paid out.